they have to go through somebody else anyway, right? We'll mention that. Oh, perfect.
I read them.
We've already told
I
him
may
he
not
can do
understand it, but I
In
read
fact,
them.
He could do what he wants, he could get the sign as long as it's
Okay.
and it's put
I told him I'll never let him
off
retire.
the right of way. As a matter of
Perfect.
fact, he could
likes
put it
it.
right on my
You can mention if you want to.
I just told Mike.
Okay.
No, he's checking. Why is he checking?
All right, it being 6:30, let's call the meeting to order. Mr. Zrenchek, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Barnes,
Here?
Mrs. Rogers,
Here.
Mr. Roach,
Here.
Mrs. Barney,
Here,
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Ms. Durig,
Here.
Solicitor Nicholas,
Here.
Mr. Lennon.
Here.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the September 17th, 2024 minutes. Do I hear a second?
second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers,
Aye.
Mr. Roach,
Aye.
Mrs. Barney,
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
We good, Jack? Okay. Let's move on to the engineer's report. Mr.
Okay.
Lennon,
Sorry.
I was just calling you.
Going to monthly report. Village of Lawrence collection system contract right now. Same update as last month. Jason, the contractor, on all these restoration complaints. He did show up last week, but I'd say a lot of it wasn't satisfactory. That we'll be following up with him again. So we're holding the final change order on the final quantities until we get the majority's punch list items addressed. And there's some administrative items that we want to see, like the contract required post-construction CCTV of all the sewers. We want to go through all that, so before we move forward in that final change order. So no action items recommended tonight for that contract.
Okay.
Under the wastewater treatment plant contract, they did complete a lot of work this month with the SPR equipment, transducer floats, wet well pumps were installed. They had a large crane on site, working on concrete sidewalks, emergency generator was installed. They did do the change order for that sewer lateral for the adjacent building we talked about last month. And a lot of general site electrical work, pulling a lot of wire in the last month. So, and also West Penn Power got majority of their work complete, and they're ready for the transformer. And the electrician just needs to set a transformer pad, but that moved along pretty quickly. So, good update there. The next item I had in italics, so that was the updated schedule. We've been talking about this. So they've previously intimated about delays on equipment deliveries. And then also with West Penn Power with the electric service on Georgetown Road and all the wiring. So he did submit a 246 calendar day extension. That was part of change order 6. That aligns with the dates that we talked about several months ago, where they're still going to start the plant in November, end of November, early December. And then the Teodori work, that'll be extending into next year for the abandonment of the plant, converting it into a new pump station. They can't start that until the new plant's online. So we do have change orders on the agenda for tonight. First one is change order number 4 for an increase in contract amount of $9,182.43. That's for the sewer lateral for that adjacent building in the industrial park. If you flip over to page 2, and I include tables too, it's on the agenda, but these tables give it a little more detail. Change order number 5 for an increase in the contract amount of $6,890.78. And that include multiple items where cost credits and additional scope. So you could take a look, like there's some interior lighting revisions. We eliminated a control panel, used aluminum grating, which saves some money. There's the channel gates that'll help the operations staff operate the plant a little bit better, which was an additional cost. An additional UV tank drain, handrail on the SBR tank, site grading modifications, which was a credit. And then on the masonry block on the building, there was an accent color that was added. It really looks nice. So that's change order number 5, and that's additional $6,890.78. Change order number 6, this is for electrical modifications. This includes the West Penn Power service. So before West Penn Power came in and advised of all the changes that were needed to be made, the contractor had already run the conduit to the utility pole, and he was ready to install. And then they came back and said, well, we can't do it per plan. This is what we told you during design, but the service burned up on Georgetown Road that we weren't aware of. They didn't notify us. And then it was, we have to do a pad-mounted transformer instead of a pole-mounted transformer. and they wanted to do it on our property, so they revised everything.
Okay.
So there's the West Penn Power Electrical Service Modification, the amount of $47,157.33. That also includes a credit for the wiring, which was pretty big because the wiring's shorter now than it would have been to run to where the original utility pole was under the contract. We had credits that we were tracking with the contractor for inside the building for different enclosure types that save money. That's a credit of $33,100. Site lighting, we did make a modification because the tanks are now higher out of the ground than they originally planned on to save money back when we rebid the job. We did have to extend the poles. That's $6,732.48. And there is a time extension for the electrical, but also for all the equipment delays, which is at 246 days. So we'd recommend approval of that change order. And then the last change order is change order number 7 in the increase in the contract amount of $32,537.51 and a time extension of 5 days. This is for down at Teodori. There's 2 buildings. There's the utility building that's going to be used for the new pump station. Then there's the plant control building, which it was originally planned under the contract and more or less abandoned it. It would still stay standing. Reviewing with Mike, the roof is leaking. It can be used for storage. The doors are rusted out. So this change order is to replace the roof, put on new doors. We reviewed the cost with other roofing and door contracts we have, and they're reasonable compared to what we have.
So I take it this is not the door that we replaced previously? Did we replace some doors?
We replaced some doors down at Miller's Run.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Okay. Last item, we do have partial payment number 16, the amount of $1,359,669.47. So we do recommend a motion to approve that as well. And we also have Penvest payment request number 17 in the amount of $1,384,377.99. And that's for request reimbursement to Penvest. So we recommend approval of that. I'm going to keep going through developments. If you flip over to page 3, level up pickleball facility. We did prepare the planning module I discussed with Mike earlier. There's a couple revisions I need to make, and we'll issue that final for the pickleball facility. Silver Creek planned residential development. So that plan was previously approved. They did resubmit. I was reviewing it as of the last meeting. They did include it in their substitution request for piping materials, manhole types, as well as some manhole profile revisions. Our review letter advised it was not in accordance with Cecil Authority standard specifications. The substitutions, there's a lot of history here where you've required this. Technically, it might be okay, but your rules and regs require it. If we were to, and I think the developer had planned on attending one of the meetings, but it'd be, for a substitution request like that, I think you'd be talking about looking at going back to your rules and regulations and standard details if you were even to consider it, because you'd want to, you've always enforced this. It'd be a change from past practices. So.
Okay. There's not been a request for an appeal or anything like that at this time?
No, they got the letter probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. I haven't received a call, Mike. I don't know. No. We did have a field meeting probably 3 months ago about it where they were advised this has always been enforced. This is the requirements. They still submitted, so we did review it. They also had some alignment modifications, so they did need to submit it anyways because they changed some of the grading. They shallowed up some of the sewer, so some of it they were able to change because it met your requirements. But other places they did show things that didn't meet your requirements, so they need to resubmit. So. I
mean, me personally, I'm not opposed to looking at changes from the code if there's something that's newer, better, or more information's been given since the last time that code was written. So I'm not opposed to looking at that and reviewing some type of appeal from anyone, but until we hear back from them.
We'll hold.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Mount Pleasant sewer system. I don't have an update, but we are looking at that. I'm still trying to figure out if it's feasible to do by gravity. We're using Google Earth to draw a profile along the stream. Along the road, you need pump stations, so we're looking along the stream to see if there's a good alignment to maintain gravity down to your last manhole. So it's right now, I don't have an update beyond that, but we'll have that for the next meeting. Under grants, on page 4, the grant table at the top, so you have the two 2023 statewide LSAs. Those have not been awarded yet. I'm hearing different things and when it's going to be awarded. And the reason that's important, the 2024 statewide LSAs are due at the end of November. So I'll work with Mike before the next meeting. We'll have some resolutions for submission of grants. And it may be resubmissions of previous ones, but it may also be Lawrence Phase 2. Might be a grant to go through the statewide, because that's you can get up to $1 million through the statewide LSA. Washington County LSA is a new one. That is due at the end of this month. The resolution is on the agenda to submit for the Cherry Brook lift station improvements. That's one you also filed on our 2023 statewide LSA, but being that we haven't heard back, let's submit this one, because I think it's a good project under that program. We submitted for a 50-50 share. The county LSA, they like to see local share when you submit instead of 100% grant request.
Yep.
So that's a recommendation to
Okay.
get the funding there. So
What's the total? Do you know what they're totally giving away?
the county,
Yeah.
I don't know. I do know one of our other authorities, a grant request in this range, they've been pretty successful for different sewer improvement projects. So,
Okay.
yep. Yeah, as long as there's a grant local share, I know when they go for 100%, they had the same, because I think we filed for a 100% grant on Lawrence Phase 2 last time, and that was not awarded. So let's try a different approach this go around, go for a 50% request.
Okay.
Yep. And a lot of the awards are in this dollar range. I'd say like 200 to 300,000 for sewer projects.
Okay.
So. And the annual report for last year was finalized. That was issued to Mike and Shanna. So
Yep.
for
They
Vaughn.
gave us a copy.
The schedule is attached to the yellow packet too. The contractor schedule, I guess I breezed past that, but if you want to see all the detail, and they did put in, I believe, what color was that? When you go in red, you see the red fonts. Those are the delivery delays that they noted on there for the different items. So it'd be a contract extension at no cost to extend the contract. So,
Does that affect our Penvest loan at all?
no.
Okay.
What's that? Yep.
Anything else?
That's it.
Any questions? The engineer? All right, we have 5 motions to look at. We're under the contract number 21-STP1, rebid Village of Lawrence Sewage Treatment Plant. Do I hear a motion to approve change order number 4 for an increase in the contract amount of $9,182.43? Larry has described already what that change order is for an extension of the sewer service lateral to provide sewer service for an industrial park building located adjacent to the CTMA property.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Second one is a motion to approve change order number 5 as an increase in contract amount of $6,890.78. Change order is to adjust contract amount for the multiple items, cost credits, and additional scope required under the subject contract. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Third one is, do I hear a motion to approve the change order number 6 for an increase in contract amount of $20,789.81 and a time extension of 246 calendar days? Cost modifications are for electrical modifications which include West Penn Power service modifications, control building electrical credits, and site lighting modifications. Time extension for equipment lead time delays and delayed electrical service. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
you're
Roll
good.
call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Roach,
Aye.
Mrs. Barney,
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Fourth motion is to approve change order number 7 for an increase in contract amount of $32,537.51 and a time extension of 5 calendar days. This is for additional work for the replacement of the existing roofing and exterior doors of the Teodori Control Building. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers,
Aye.
Mr. Roach,
Aye.
Mrs. Barney,
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
The fifth one under that contract is a motion to approve partial payment number 17 in the amount of $1,359,669.47.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers,
Aye.
Mr. Roach,
Aye.
Mrs. Barney,
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
I will make the next motion. I make a motion to, for Penvest payment requisition, motion to approve the payment requisition number 17 in the amount of $1,384,377.99.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers,
Aye.
Mr. Roach,
Aye.
Mrs. Barney,
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Do I hear a motion to approve resolution to apply to the fiscal year 2025 Washington County Local Share Account LSA program for a grant in the amount of $300,000 for the Cherry Brook Lift Station Improvement Project?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers,
Aye.
Mr. Roach,
Aye.
Mrs. Barney,
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Before we move on, I just want to make a comment about having the town hall in Lawrence. I think it was September 19th. We had a great showing. I thank everybody for showing up. I thank Mr. Sadowski for helping set up and opening up the Civic Building for us. There were a lot of questions and comments that came out of that. One of them mainly regarding the basement water and the storm water plan. I did the next day send an email to the Cecil Township Board of Supervisors regarding that, and I did get a response from Chairman Cassiola that the engineer had reviewed it. It was not in the budget for this year, but they would meet with our engineers and our authority manager. Just wondering whether that meeting has been set up yet.
I did have a telephone conversation with their engineer. He did advise that the scope for the stormwater improvements projects is just for surface water. That is, limited to where they see surface water issues. It's not for the groundwater discussions I think we had with some of the residents at the public meeting with the old Wildcat sewer. So.
And so I think we need a plan here of what we're going to do for the the members of the community who have that issue.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that we can help out with on our plans? I know ours won't change. The basement drains should not be tapped into the new system. But is there anything that we can push back with on the supervisors to help with this kind of stormwater plan?
With the depth, I'm not sure. Because we have the old Wildcat sewers, which are privately owned. I think the septic abandonment, that was a discussion item.
Yeah, the septic abandonment, that is in the township code, that is required.
Okay.
So that's something that they'll have to do. I did talk to Walt, and basically what he talked about is the floor drains, since building code does require floor drains in new construction to be tied in, we can let the floor drains, if they're there, be tied in, but we can't have anything like if there's a sump pump, that stuff, anything like a sump pump would have to come out. We can't let that go in there. So we may be able to bend a little bit on the floor drains, for certain things, but as far as the extra water, as far as like if they have a sump pump in there, that cannot be tied in.
So when is our timeline? We need to know what can be done and what can't be done as far as what can be tied in.
Larry, I think we have a little bit of time because we have a few things to discuss before the actual connection, happens, because you have to wait. Again, we have approximately 70 homes that can tie in sooner than the portion of the homes that go to the plant. So there's a few items that I have on my report just for discussion that we have to consider. So I think we have a little bit of time to discuss this.
Okay, I want to leave it top of mind so we don't drop this. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the solicitor's report. Mr. Nicholas.
Okay, thank you. Written report's been circulated, just two items. One, the mediation for the CHJA litigation is presently November the 19th. And if I understand correctly, our chairman will be able to attend that.
Yes.
Along with our manager. And I just wanted to mention for the board's benefit, just as a refresher, that through agreement with all parties, we're going with former federal district judge Benson as a mediator. And I think that I don't believe there could be a better choice for this situation. But I do think it would be important that I mention we will circulate an email to all of our clients that we should have some discussion pre-mediation as to what our approach will be when we go in. If it's impossible to get everyone together, we'll at least incrementally discuss what our plan will be, and naturally I'll get together with our chairman and Mike in that regard. It isn't that others aren't welcome. Anybody from the board could attend that theoretically, but our experience with Judge Benson is he looks for one representative from the board along with the manager, as well as a statement that we'll create, a mediation statement, and that seems to be his preference. But, and I did want to mention that whatever would come from that mediation, that our chairman, or for that matter, any other representative from another board, would not reach a binding conclusion there. It's understood that our chairman would have to come back along with myself and our manager to the board and present what happened and look for any approvals that might be necessary.
Okay.
Also, I wanted to, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to discuss now or after the meeting. Also, you'll recall at the last meeting, there was discussion about taking a look at our rules and regulations as well as our developer issues. Roseanne was appointed to chair, if you will, that committee. She met with Mike and I and Pat from my office, who you all met, and we started that process generally. We will have to, as we discussed, involve our engineer because of the nature of rules and regs, but we began that process.
Okay.
On the flip side of the coin, there had been discussion previously about safety procedures, safety manuals, et cetera. And I did speak with Craig, and when Mike and Craig's schedule permits later in the year, perhaps we can get together and discuss that. Mike has history in that regard, as do we, and our engineer as well, and we can keep that on the radar at the same time. So that's all I have.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Durick, Business Manager's Report.
Great. This month's packet included the financial reports for August 2024. Any questions?
Nope.
And that's all I have.
Okay, moving on. Mr. Zrenchek, Authority Manager's Report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. This evening, under old business, we still have the 3 NPDS permit renewals that were submitted to DEP. Cherry Brook and Teodori are still under review. The One for Miller's Run, we received the draft. We have no comments back. It was posted for the comment period, so we're just waiting for the final copy of the permit. Silver Creek, Mr. Lennon touched on that, so I won't go over that. Gerber Collision, wanted to do a development or change some things at the property at 55 View Road for a collision center. We issued a comment letter back in April of '24, and no change on that. We haven't heard anything more. L&S Wastewater contacted the authority about acquiring the treatment plant collection system known as the Monaco plan. I reviewed that information. I will be putting a letter together to send back over them. There are a few more things I'd like to see, and then I can give the board some more information once I hear back on my comments. Item 5, number 2 pump at Miller's Run Pump Station was removed and sent out for repair. They've been having an issue with getting some parts. I did find some that we had in inventory, so I think with what we had in inventory and what they're able to find that I don't have, they're close to getting that returned to us. Item 6, Tim Endler from PennDOT contacted me regarding the maintenance bond that the authority has on Georgetown Road for the Lawrence project. They wanted us to make base repairs on various locations that were damaged. They were supposed to mark it, and they didn't. They were supposed to come back out again this week and mark it, and they're going to contact us when complete. I followed up. I have not heard anything else, so there's no change on that for right now. Item 7, Miller's Run wastewater treatment plant. The tank and building lights were not working. Through investigation, we found out that the replacement, or the bulbs and some of the photo sensors were burnt out or bad. So we ordered the tank lighting, bulbs, and photo sensors, and they're in the process of being installed. The building lighting fixtures are the old sodium vapor bulbs, which draw a large amount of power. So I'm working with a vendor to see about getting pricing on LED fixtures to upgrade those, see what the cost is for that. There are 17 fixtures that would need to be replaced. So we can probably phase those in if it's cost prohibitive and just change them out as need be. Under new business, the pickleball facility, 19 Mayview Road, provided the volume of sewage that would be generated daily for the sewage facilities planning module. So we're working on that. But on September 24th, we discovered that the contract was working at the site, and they are doing work that was not authorized to complete as the building permit has not been issued. I contacted the developer's engineer to discuss the status of the project and inform him of the necessary steps that are required by the authority for connecting to the sewer system. There's also been some conflicting reports of what's going in over there as far as it's been going back and forth. At first it was supposed to be a restaurant, or not a restaurant, but just they were going to bring in food and just pickleball players, and then somebody had said it's supposed to be a banquet facility. So it's going back and forth, so we need to know exactly what it's going to be and what the use is, because if we accept these lower calculations, what we will have to do is, once it's up and running, is do a study of what the usage is to see if more EDUs would be owed if the usage is more than what they calculated. But I'm keeping up with this, but I just want to inform everybody of what's going on there. So, item 2, on October 1st, we received a call from a resident at 1 Orchard Street in Muse. She was having an issue with her sewer, and the plumber told her that it might be our issue. Our operator, Greg Malone, went out and checked on the issue and determined that it was not the authority's problem. But the resident called me to tell me that Greg went above and beyond to explain things to her and look around with her and try to go over some things and offer recommendations, to help her resolve this problem. So I just wanted to acknowledge him here at the meeting for his efforts of going above and beyond.
That's great, thank you.
Property owner at 5 School Street in Lawrence dropped off a bill at the authority offices for restoration work at his property. The authority had acquired a 20-foot dedicated permanent sanitary sewer easement with the previous owner of the property for the project. When I spoke with the owner and explained that nothing is to be planted or built on the easement, because if we have to get in there and do work, we can't have anything there. I also explained that he needed to contact the authority if there was damage to the property that wasn't restored properly from the construction. And he should have contacted us before he went out and contracted somebody to do the repairs. He informed me that he will pursue the magistrate if, restitution isn't made satisfactorily. So I informed him that I would present the invoice to the board at the authority meeting, and in my report, I attached his for everybody to look over if there's any questions. Item 4, we received the check for $300,000 from the Redevelopment Authority of Washington County, LSA, for the Lawrence project. This grant was applied for back in '21. We submitted the proper paperwork that they were looking for, the invoices, and they sent us the check. So that was deposited in the Penvest account for put back into the project. We received notice that the NPDES permit for the Village of Lawrence Theodore sewage treatment plant expires on August 25th of 2025. The renewal application needs to be submitted by no later than March 4th. I will work on getting this submitted, but this is for the new plant that has not gone online yet, so it's going to be a fairly straightforward process to apply for it because there's no data or anything that I'm just going to have to, it's just going to be fill out the application, send it in and say, plant hasn't gone online yet, so should be an easy renewal. Item 6, we received invoices from our lady that handles our website for the past 5 years. She apologized for not providing these sooner. I was able to confirm the work that was done on the invoices for 2022 and 2023, but I'm going to discuss the 2019 to 2021 invoice with Shanna to see, just to confirm the work prior to making the payment. The total of the invoices for 5 years is $1,485. She also let us know that the rate has been $30, and it's going to increase to $50 per hour for work. The rate has been $30 per hour since 2016. So,
I wasn't even aware that we had a web designer. I thought we went through
it's,
Cecil Township for that.
I'm thinking I'm not sure if they use Robin as well. So she's the one that posts everything to our website. That's how it's been since I've started.
Okay. Can you check with Dawn to ensure that that is the case?
Yeah.
And that the rate is going up for them as well? How, just to
I can.
make sure we do our due diligence on that one.
I can.
Okay, great.
Item 7, the backflow preventers are coming due for annual service at 3 of the facilities. I will get this on the schedule. I just have to get the remaining paperwork. I can't schedule anything until I have that paperwork for the plumber to fill out.
But that's just a maintenance expense.
That's just
It's
a
already in
maintenance-
our
that's
budget.
something that
Okay.
we do every year. Item number 8, we had a bearing fail on one of the rollers for the belt filter press. You can see it in the picture right below the yellow pull rope. You can see that bearing failed. I was able to order the replacement bearings, and I ordered a couple spares just so we have them in inventory. This way we're not caught flat-footed. Item 9, I started preliminary work on the 2025 budget. Once a draft is completed, I'll forward it to the budget committee for review, comment, and then we can get together and fine-tune from there. But I just want to get something together before we have a meeting so everybody can look over and have their questions ready.
A meeting for the budget committee. We won't have that ready for the November meeting for sure. Oh, we will?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I'll be able to have that together. For
Okay.
you. So, and then last is item 10, which are some items for consideration concerning the new sewer system in Lawrence. Some of the questions, talking to some of the residents after the meeting, that the board, is going to have to consider, as we move forward is somebody has asked if there is a payment plan for the tap-in fee, a payment plan for lateral installation cost, and then what if a resident wants to connect but does not have the tap-in fee? I know that in the past with the Miller's Run project, The authority did do some sort of payment plan, but that's something that we would have to discuss to see if we want to carry that forward. And maybe set some terms, because it seemed like originally when they did that, there was no time limit on it. I still think we have 2 or 3 that are outstanding, that they're
There's-
close to being paid off.
Yeah.
So,
Excuse me, just a suggestion in that regard, if Roseanne would be interested, since we're already kind of going down the road of the rules and regs. There's some nuances to that situation about the tie-ins, the forgiveness, payment plans, et cetera, some experiences, some historical input, whatever. If it would be acceptable, maybe when we meet, we can talk a little bit about that, come up with some recommendations for the board, because our plan was to kind of meet with some regularity on that, and perhaps include the engineer, if that's okay, and come up with some specific recommendations on how we do it. For everyone's benefit, some kind of the dinosaur on the board here with recollection back to the Miller's Run project. There was concern that there were people that couldn't afford to tap in, people that didn't want to tap in, and people that wanted to tap in but would have a delay before they could tap in. It reached a point where we had to go to the magistrate to deal with some of these issues. And there were a variety of ways that ended up panning out. But I think maybe being a little more proactive in that regard would be helpful. And if that works for the rest of the board, that might be a good idea to at least get a plan together and present some options.
I think that would be great.
There were 2 other issues that I heard during that meeting. One was the schedule. If we could wait and delay to making it a required tap in spring, I heard, instead of doing it earlier, like through the winter.
Mhm.
And the other one was that we're going to face some challenges where some of the residents just don't have the ability to make decisions on their own. That how do we handle that, where we have people living in homes that are having some challenges, and they don't have anybody taking care of them, so they don't really have the knowledge to understand what's going on. So what would happen with them? And I don't know what we do about that, if we just postpone that tap in until someone with capacity buys that property, or
somebody else in their stead
Or-
steps in if they have
or somebody
a
else.
power of attorney or something like that.
And then that, again, just to, get the risk of getting in the weeds a little bit, when you do that, or you make those exceptions, you want to be consistent.
Right.
And memorialize that in some way with some kind of an agreement or what have you. And again, like I mentioned with the CHA, there's no, you're welcome to participate. You have interest in that. When we get together and talk about that, if you'd be interested in joining us on that, I'd be happy to invite you.
Say yes, Brad. Just say yes, Brad.
Yes. That's an option for
I
the
think
boss.
that's very good. I know we talked about this earlier in the planning, even before this was approved, that we were going to need some type of plan. And I don't think that we looked into having a third-party collection system other than offering the low loans that Penvest is offering. So that information is out there to the community. But handling anything internal for the staff that we have might be challenging. I know it's been done in the past. So I'd like to put that on your conversation, as one of the items. Can we even have that capacity and do that? But let's make this a top priority as well, because we're going to have this problem sooner rather than later.
And I mentioned Pat is involved in that in our office, and that's one of the reasons I wanted him here tonight to hear it. Also, I was going to mention that for the purpose of whatever it is that we're going to do, whatever we implement, I just want to stress, like, we're very careful with that in Miller's Run, that you want to treat everybody equal. You
Right,
know,
right.
everybody should have the same opportunities or the same latitude that we afford, so. Okay, I'll follow up.
And along those lines, that's why I thought we thought it was too much to ask that the current staff take on that internal bill collection
Right.
if a high majority of people said, I want to make payments over 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, yeah.
Sure.
So,
Okay,
yeah,
I'll
thank
follow
you,
up. I
thank
will.
you, appreciate that.
Okay.
That's all I have this evening. I'll entertain any questions if anybody has them.
Do we need to talk more about this landscape bill here?
So were those trees planted? Were the
There
trees
was-
planted in the easement?
There was one tree that was planted in the easement that they pulled out originally when they went through. There was some fence and an easement, or the tree. They pulled the one tree out and the fence down. They went through, and at the time I informed him, because he had us come out about something else, and I told him that you can't put the tree back on the easement, and he went and put it back anyway. So, Ramel, is there anything we need to do at this time with that bill?
Oh, the one that I say no, this is regarding the right-of-way? No, I think that no action is satisfactory. And the right-of-way that we're talking about is, as is indicated on the report, pre-existed this gentleman's purchasing this property. And whatever he's doing it rogue, so to speak. And I think Mike's clear in what his position is, and I don't think you should take any action regarding that. If you see fit, I mean, Mike could get back to him and say that, you know, we're not going to pay that. Unless, you know, the pleasure of the board was to do it. But my thought is that, you know, it's a right-of-way that he shouldn't be doing what he's doing on that right-of-way. So, and I think Mike agrees with that. So, yes, I don't, other than either don't take any action and ignore it, or don't take any action and just ask Mike to get back to him and say that the board chose not to take any action on it.
I'd rather communicate rather than not.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else has
I
any.
agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we try to keep as civil as we possibly can.
Exactly.
But this goes back to, you do for one person, it has to be the same everywhere.
Right.
There is rolling around easements, so.
Right.
I mean, is there anything that was said that leads him to believe that we would pay for this? I'm assuming that the answer to that's no.
No.
No one's made a commitment.
No, because basically, at the end of the day, they install the topsoil and mulch to repair damage from construction. If they damage something and it wasn't put back satisfactorily, he should have contacted the authority,
Right.
so I can put it on the punch list, so we can forward that to the contractor.
Right,
Which would have been covered.
Which would have been covered.
Right.
But then again, if the contractor didn't satisfactorily do it, you know, then we can go back. But this, he just took it upon himself to go ahead and repair this and not let the contractor even have a chance to make good on this. So,
And what you would find if we have had cases where someone such as this would file an action in the Court of Common Pleas naming a municipal entity and the contractor, in which case we should get out of that case by a motion. Or if they would only sue the municipal would be within its rights to bring in the contractor. And generally speaking, the contractor bears the responsibility if there's liability.
yeah.
From our standpoint, though, regardless of what happened previously at the magistrate, our position would be the same.
So I understand it's after the fact, but maybe we should approach the contractor and say, if you have to mitigate the damages with this, if it was his, get a price from him to show what our exposure would be with that. We didn't have the benefit of a competent, we don't know who this is. And find out what that contractor could make those repairs for, and then see where it goes, and maybe it falls back on him after the fact, but it surely isn't $7,800.
No,
No.
certainly not.
Right, so I think
mean, I wouldn't
if you want to be
opposed to
proactive,
that, yeah,
if you want,
knowing
But
what
we-
it would cost from our contractor.
We could follow up on that as well.
Just to have in our back pocket, really.
yeah, like I said, again, the problem is the trees, those aren't small trees that he's putting
No.
on there. If there was a, you know, a dwarf pine tree, you know, you might be able to consider. These are big trees that he wants to put back for privacy. You know, like I said, again, and his argument has been that he told the previous owner before he bought the house not to sign the easement. That's between him and the
Yep.
previous owner.
That's-
I have nothing to do with
Yeah.
that, you know, like you said,
Right.
again, I sympathize, but, you know, there's a proper procedure you have to follow, and this wasn't followed properly, so.
Agree.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, moving on. Do we have any correspondence?
No.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve payment of expenses and transfer of funds.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers,
Aye.
Mr. Roach,
Aye.
Mrs. Barney,
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is comments from the floor. Please state your name and address for us, please.
Aaron Cross, 14 3rd Street, Lawrence. The 70 homes that are gonna tap in first, we have a date. When are the letters going
Mike
out?
or Larry?
We don't have a date.
Okay. Is that Georgetown Estates? Is that the location?
They're,
No.
they're tied into they'll
We're-
flow towards Georgetown
Yeah.
Estates through the existing plant.
An
Yeah.
estimate?
I mean, they can tie in now. I'm sorry. Physically, the connections are all there. I think the question for the board is if we talked about issuing the letter. I know we had the public meeting. We talked about potentially extending it to spring for everybody, but
But if
They
she
were
wants to
talking
do it
about
ahead of
spring
time.
For the, because the plant was gonna come online end of January, February. Tap-ins for the other side of town were supposed to go out, and they felt like that's the middle of winter, you know. But this, you know, I've already had my plumber out there. I have a plan, and, you know, I'm just trying to update him on his schedule so he can, you know, get me scheduled in. And there are other people, you know, that was left hanging,
Good point.
and we have 60 days from the notice of the letter to get tapped in, so we're wondering, you know, when those letters are gonna go out.
I mean, do they need the letter to, I mean,
well, that's
they're
what I was
being
going to ask if
proactive.
the
I mean,
board's
that's wonderful.
okay if they start connecting now, even without the letter. If there are these 70 properties, Mike has a list of the addresses. If they file application,
I think that's where the issue comes in, is the ordinance that once it's available, you only have 60 days. It doesn't give a lot of time, flexibility, because you may be ready to go, you know, out of those 70, just say 25 of you are ready to go, but then you have the remaining ones, the remaining 40, they aren't ready to go, or they're not in place. But if we hit that notice to proceed, you know, you're trying to keep it uniform across the board. If I give it to all, you know, the 60-day notice and they can't do it, that's where, you know, we have to make a decision on, you know, and I know when I talked to Walt, he was like, it's absolutely 60 days.
Well, I had a question about that after the meeting, actually. And because I was thinking, is that ordinance pertinent only to sewer systems that are already in, or solely for new systems that are coming online?
That I'd have to research. I do not have an answer for you.
Because if it's somebody building a new house and it's going into the existing system, I can see where that 60 days is important. But what if it's a whole new system and the system's not ready yet? Well, this one is, but because it's going to Teodori. But is there?
We can add that to the list of what we're looking at for the purpose of giving a recommendation at next meeting.
So we may have, you know, a broader time span for you, but is it detrimental for people who are ready to do it now? I guess is my question.
If people are ready to do it, it's not detrimental. I mean, the plant, the old Teodori plant could take, you know, anybody that wants to tie on. We're not talking about 300 some homes there. You're talking about 20, you know, just say even if you put 25 or 70 homes in there, that's not going to make a difference one way or the other, because it's basically domestic flow. You know, they're not sending us tens of thousand gallons a day. So
Could we recommend, or can we do, I don't know whether we'll need a vote on this, but can we, for residents who are a part of that 70 homes, request their letter at any point now, get the letter, and they have 60 days to do it, while we're finding out whether this ordinance is actually for existing systems or new systems or both? And then when we're ready for the letter for everybody else, we send it out then. But we will know that, Ms. Cross already has her letter because she was ready to go. Is that detrimental in any way?
I don't think it would be logistically, but I think from the standpoint of uniformity and giving us a chance, I have to look at that, the ordinance, and I'm a little uncomfortable acquiescing to something like that till I've read it over.
Well, let's table this until the next meeting, but if we can make sure that we get all of our information together, and if we can get your contact information, maybe we can give you a, heads up beforehand if we already know what we're gonna do there. But I would say we should have some kind of resolution of this by next month's meeting.
Yeah, more guidance there.
Now we're into November.
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually more concerned about going into spring, when sometimes spring weather is worse than
Yeah,
winter.
can work.
And then, the floor drain issue, was that a yes to the floor drains if there's no sump pump involved?
Yes, basically what I talked to Walter is the floor drains, if they're there, those will be tied in, but you can't tie, if there's a sump pump like a perimeter drain or something along those, like you have a French drain, internal French drain, that would have to come out of the floor drain. It can't go into the floor drain. It would have to be taken out. You can't put any type of sump pump, anything like that.
What if my floor drains are tied into the sump pump to pump it out, but I don't have anything else? It's to get the floor drains pumped out high enough because I said.
Well, if it's, as long as it's not putting extra water in, it shouldn't be a problem. Like I said, if you have an internal French drain that's draining into the sanitary system, it can't be done.
Okay, so if my floor drains are tied into where my sump pump is, just to pump that water out, to pump that.
Your floor drains now, basically, you're saying that they go to your sump pump.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then does it go to your septic after that? So then she's not collecting any natural water. She's
Right,
not-
if that's the case, and it's acceptable,
Right.
if it's gray
Sanitary.
water or sanitary.
Right.
But if it's a sump pump that's collecting water that's coming in like an internal French drain from the foundation, that is not acceptable.
So since you're going to septic, you can tie in. Yours can tie in, even though you have a sump pump. It's just you're trying to get your water out of your basement. It's not, you're not collecting rainwater. It's not a French drain situation. It's just floor drains, right? You're sure?
Yeah, well, that's gonna be the gray area for all of us. Those floor drains.
Well, the floor drain, like you said, again, the sump pump, if you're saying the sump pump, 9 times out of 10, I have an internal sump pump around my foundation that was put in when I moved in. Basically, it collects the water into a little sump, but it pumps it out into the yard. It doesn't go into the floor drain. That's what I'm looking for there. If that would be that situation, no, that cannot go into the floor drain. But the existing floor drain, if it's collecting gray water or whatever that way, or if for some reason the elevation or something along those lines, you needed to pump to that elevation to get it to the septic tank, that would be acceptable because it's gray water or sewage.
We may have to dye test, maybe we need to run through a dye test on these to confirm
That's part of what's going to
Where-
need to be done.
where it's going and where it's, because if it's just leaching back out into the yard, then that's different than going in. I think that might be part of the thing is dye it to know where it's going. Then that confirms it. If it's going into the septic system, then it's already considered sewage, I guess. And
How do we police that? Or, in other words, help the
Well, what we need to
community
do,
decide?
that's one of the things is, I know I spoke to Larry and Kevin, we need to get our plumbing inspector who's going to do the inspections for us. That's part of what he's going to be doing as, his job is making sure that what is supposed to be tied in is tied in and what isn't. So that's how we're gonna figure out what's going where.
And do we have a timetable for getting that plumbing contract together?
I reached out to the Washington County Sewage Council to see if they have any recommendations for somebody that does that, because the gentleman that did it for the Miller's Run project, that company is no longer in business. So I need to find out who currently does that so we can get somebody sooner than later.
Because I'm thinking November is going to be a pretty big meeting for us, because I think we really owe it to the community to get answers for these things and get all these things in place, because we're asking them to do a lot.
And there was talk at one of the other meetings with one of the supervisors, who I won't say right now, but that supervisor had indicated that the potential existed for us to be able to continue to run through our old septic system, that water from like a sump pump and things. Now you're telling us we have to collapse them. And that was discussed. I'm not sure if you remember that. That was the meeting before this last one.
I know my mom lives in that area, and she has a house that's from, and typically back then, the raw sewage went into the tank, but the gray water went into a leach field and didn't go into the tank, just because they didn't want to overwhelm the tank. So that's part of the problem, is we're not really sure if your floor drains, so like in her home in Lawrence, her floor drains go directly to the leach field. They bypass the tank.
Mine doesn't, I know it. Mine
You know yours is going
mine was
into your
scoped
tank.
already. Yeah, and there are more like that.
Okay,
Yeah,
There's a mixture of what happens with
right.
it, but I do
Okay.
know where mine goes.
basically, looking at the ordinance here, for this, it's section 202, connection required. It says within 60 days after the passage of this part, the owner or owners of all occupied buildings located on a premise now accessible to public sanitary sewer shall connect or cause to be connected the said building or buildings with the sanitary sewer to which the property is accessible in the manner hereafter provided. And then it does, section 203 says abandonment of obsolete systems. So it does say that once that connection is made, that they have to be abandoned. I'm going by what the rules are, and we piggyback off of those ordinances. So that's why that was brought up.
One more thing I'll throw out there to you too, you're gonna have people, because you're saying you have to collapse it. There are people that have structures on top of their septic. Because not knowing, or that's how it was done back in the day, you're gonna find that they're not gonna be able to collapse it because they built on top of it.
Mhm.
So just something you need to
Mhm.
figure out how you're gonna do that.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Well, they could we have to fill it up.
Right, but I think the best thing for right now is, like Ramel said, he could take a look at that ordinance, and then we could come back with something to advise the board, looking at this, what might be the best, interpretation of this is. Like you said, again, that's the problem is, I know I've seen it in other places where the sewers have connected. They've given them a little bit longer leeway, but ours is 60 days, and I'm just going off of what past practice was. But again, like you said, it's something we're going to have to look at to consider. So,
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are skipping number 11. We do not need an executive session, so I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Have a good evening. Thank you. Mute all. We got a lot.